Entertainment segment scheduled here today, and I just want to introduce who we have. Max Kovalchuk. Max was a student of ours in SAEM some years ago. He'll tell us about that. He is now working in the touring and artist department of Elektra music in New York. So he's got some interesting things for us to talk about in that sense. And then Adam, I must ask a question before we go further with you. I have known you for quite some time, but I've never known for sure. Do we go with Valen or Valen?
Valen. No, I appreciate the ask. It's Valen.
I'm asking that. I get people sometimes that never correct me until like 5 years later. They throw me under the bus. I go, why didn't you tell me earlier? I'd be glad to call it any way you want. But I did remember somebody called you Valen, and I said, I didn't know there was a Valen in the house. What's up?
Yeah, I've been so used to it for, I don't know, the last decade that I just kind of, it's a tomato, but yeah, Valen's correct. Thank you.
All right, Adam Valen's on, marketing manager for Brian Drusky Entertainment. And also Adam was very, very valuable in the Save the Stages campaign, which of course you see his logo up there. So we're going to be talking about that. We've talked about that in our classes, all of our classes. And then we also have Shay O'Neill, which Shay is one of our current students and the president of our SAEM club. So she's going to be helping with some questions and moderating today. So I wanted to get all the introductions out there. And Shay, what we can do is, if you wouldn't mind checking on the questions and keeping charge of the chat sessions, because I know I'll probably turn this whole thing off and leave the session if I try to answer anybody. And we can either answer them as we go along. So if you have questions, feel free to put them out there, or, you know, we can hang to the end and ask them then too. And the same thing with Shay. I know you've got some questions. I've got some questions. So we'll kind of go back and forth on it. But guys, what I thought we'd just start out with is just really to give some background on yourselves, like we like to do with everybody. And you can just, you know, I'd like to talk a little bit about how you formed your band, Nevada Color, which some of the students don't know about, and they hear us all talking about it, because it's all relevant to the entertainment section and also what you do. So maybe Max, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having us. Yeah, so as Ed said, I went to Point Park, graduated in 2014 with a SAEM degree. Man, I remember choosing Point Park. Ed, I think I met with you when I was a junior in high school. Just wanted to learn more about the music industry and entertainment industry. You know, I grew up in a kind of musical household. My dad was a barbershop quartet singer. I grew up playing the trumpet and playing guitar, and you know, just loved music and loved researching music and sharing it with my friends. So I didn't know that was a job, and it is. So, you know, found out about the program at Point Park, met with Ed, and, you know, best salesman in the world. He had me sold right there and then. So I went to Point Park. While I was there, I played soccer for a couple of years, and then, you know, had to give that up just because I got so involved with the music stuff because there were so many opportunities. I was part of the SAEM club for a couple of years, I think my freshman and sophomore year, and then started and founded the Music Association, which I'm not sure if that's still around or not, but if it is, good. If not,
yeah, it is. But you're right. That was the beginning. That's what I forgot about. You guys were right on the beginning of that.
Yeah. And, you know, I got really lucky with the timing when I came in. Sage AE was just opening that winter, 2010. You know, I think through one of the workshops that we had at Point Park, they had a bunch of panelists who were working at Sage AE come in and speak to us. So I just went up to them after and just said, hey, like, can I do anything for you? Like, can I intern? Can I have a job? Anything? They're like, no, you can't have an internship. And I was like, okay, well, can I like sweep the floors? Like, what, you know, can I do anything? And so they're like, yeah, you can sweep the floors. It's fine. So I started in guest services there, did a bunch of different stuff there. I worked in the box office, which was super valuable, handled VIP seats, did ticketing, pretty much everything you could do there, which ended up turning into an internship eventually which was amazing. Amy Cooper over there is incredible. If you ever had the chance to meet her or pick her brain, she just is, has so much knowledge and is such a valuable person to know. So that was an incredible experience at Stage AE, which led to, just through my coworkers, getting a job with Live Nation as a production runner. So I did that for about 10 years, actually, from the time I was a freshman up until I moved to New York. Also an incredible experience, obviously, just working on the biggest scale possible when it comes to concerts. That was, I learned something new every single time I went to work. Also through Stage AE, I had a coworker there who I saw did an internship with Epic Records, which is owned by Sony. So I started talking to him about that a bit. Just, how did you get it? What does it entail? And he let me know that he was a college rep for Sony. So I think all 3 major labels still have college marketing departments. He happened to be graduating. They needed someone new. I was like, yes, I don't know what that is, but I want to do it. Because I was kind of interested in record labels and, shadowed him. Luckily, after a few interviews, got the job there, which was just, it opened my world into a totally different sector of the music industry that I hadn't experienced before. Because at that point, it was just live concerts. So kind of fell in love with working for a record label. Made a ton of great connections with my peers across the country, which all of a sudden opened up my network. And ended up being very valuable whenever it came time to book some tours for our band, some other artists that I worked for. I all of a sudden knew someone who was in the music scene in every city across the country. So I did that through college, which was great. Started my first band, which was not the band with Adam, although he did play with us a couple times. Started that band and just started booking house shows in our basement just because we wanted to play shows and we didn't want to have to sell tickets for a promoter and didn't really know how to do that anyway. We started booking house shows. From there, it would be our band and we'd have a number of other local bands. So it started getting integrated into the local music scene that way and started going to other house shows and meeting bands and meeting people that were just kind of doing it, like DIY style. And from there, I ended up meeting a kid, Kevin Garrett, who has now gone on to have a lot of success as an artist, as a songwriter. But, I booked him in this basement and I remember watching the crowd and at that moment, I knew that I wanted to work in music forever. That's absolutely what I had to do. Because, you have a basement full of 50 drunk college kids at 1 a.m. and you have a kid playing an acoustic guitar and everyone is quiet and attentive and watching him. And it was like, this is like a party, and everyone was just so intent on watching him because he was so incredible. So from there, I approached him and just said, hey, I work for Sony. That means anything else at college rep, it meant nothing. But he's like, oh yeah, you work for Sony. Cool. All right. I'll listen to you talk. It's funny, the perception of what that was, but how valuable it was. So I started working with him, booked my first ever tour for him. No one showed up to any of the shows. It was a total disaster, but I learned a lot from it. All these experiences, you don't know what you're doing and you try and figure it out and you learn from it. Started working with some other bands as well. One from Philly called Cold Fronts. They were more of an indie rock band. Went on to have success. They ended up getting signed to Sire Records. They were discovered at South by Southwest by Seymour Stein, who, if you don't know who that is, just Google him. Signed the Ramones, Talking Heads, Madonna, legend. And worked with a handful of other bands. I think at that point then we probably started in Nevada Color. So me, Adam, and then 3 other guys. One of the guys I was in a band with before that. And yeah, learned, I'm sure we'll go into a lot of that, so I won't touch on it just yet, but learned so much, and that was such an incredible and valuable experience. Also, from working with these bands, decided I should probably learn a little bit more formally about artist management and what that meant. So there was a local artist management company called Cursive Creative that Josh Bakaitis ran. Josh now works at Live Nation, worked with Adam at Drusky for a number of years. So I interned with the management company, learned, really learned how to like properly book a show, even though it's not, they weren't the agent. That's not really what they did, but they did deal a lot with contracts and show contracts. So learned a ton from that experience. That led to Josh offering me a job at Drusky as a production manager. So I was a production manager for some shows at Altar Bar when it was around, which was like a 650 cap club, Hard Rock Cafe, Smiling Moose, Cativo, just a bunch of clubs that Drusky worked and operated out of. So at that point, I kind of had to quit. I was still doing the Stage AE stuff. I was still doing Live Nation and Sony and the band and all working with the artists. So had to quit Stage AE just because it was a different opportunity that, kind of took me to the next step in my career. So I worked for Drusky as a production manager for a number of years, which was an incredible experience. And then, I won't get too into it again with the band, but we ended up putting out a debut album, went on tour for a month, got back, and I got an email from some guy saying, hey, do you guys have a record deal? Are you interested in talking about a record deal? I thought it was a scam. The next week I was in New York in his office and it wasn't a scam. So we ended up signing a record deal, did that for 5 years, decided it was time to move on to the next chapter of our lives. I moved to New York about a year and a half ago with no job, nothing, which was terrifying, and got a job at the Barclays Center doing guest services, the same job that I started with in the music industry 10 years ago, which was frustrating, but also an incredible opportunity and experience. And then, that led to the job at Elektra that happened to open up, and our old friend Mark Fritzkes, who worked at Atlantic in radio promotions, just happened to work very closely on a daily basis with my current boss. So I reached out to him. He was like, that's so funny. I know her. I work with her on a daily basis. I'll put you in touch. And ended up getting the job at Elektra. So I've been working there for about a year and a half. Started as the assistant, still technically the assistant. One of our managers in the department left, so I've taken over his roster. So I now oversee about 26 artists on the touring and artist development side of things. We can get more into that later, the specifics of what that means. But anyway, that's my background.
Wow. That's a good one, because you know what? You guys are the same, and so many of our other students are too. What I love is you guys just do everything, and we've all tried to talk about that in our classes, that so many students think they want to just do marketing or they just want to be a booker, and and it's great that they have this mindset to that. But we know, because we've, gone through these roads, that sometimes those opportunities are not always right in front of you, and you have to open up a little bit wider and become that usher and guest services provider and all this. And eventually, perhaps you might get to hopefully where you wanted to get to, that type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, like that makes just really quick, like that it's so valuable to get as much experience as you possibly can, even if like, I definitely want to work for a record label. Like, that's great, but you should also know how ticketing works. You should also know how to book a show. Like, all that stuff,
right?
It all comes back. So the more well-rounded, and like now, while you're in college, the more experience you can get, the more you're generally going to learn, and it's just going to make you that much more valuable when it comes to sit down for that first interview, for your career. So to your point, super valuable, even if you know what you want to do, like, get as much experience as you can while you can.
Yeah, just a sidebar. I remember you particularly, and Adam too, you guys had this record label thing in your mind back in the day when we were teaching at Stage AE and Mark was teaching and Greg Joseph, because I was like, I don't know if I want to go this route with them, because the labels are not doing that great back at that time. And I thought, there'd be so many other things we could do. But I remember you guys had this drive, and, that's about the same time, give or take, we were starting Pioneer Records. but on your own, you kept having that interest. And it's interesting how in your case now that you're actually working for the label, and that as students, as he was saying, one of our part-time teachers at the time, and this is where we tell you, use us as much as we can be used. He was a part-time for us, and he taught a recording industry class that we created. And he was vice president of Atlantic Records in their promotions department. We were just so fortunate to have him because he lived here in Pittsburgh instead of living in New York, where he should have been, but he was able to avoid that years ago. And so I reached out to him, of course, to teach. And well, it's funny because everybody says the same thing. Ed, what would I know about teaching? I'm like, what are you talking about? You have so much information in your head. We just have to get it out. And anyways, he did it for about 4 or 5 years, which I couldn't believe that he stayed on that long. And now he eventually retired. But it was so interesting because there you go. When you heard that, you reached out and he had that great connection. And now you're working for Elektra Touring in New York. Probably because Mark had put a good word in for it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it just goes to show you, like, I knew Mark for 10 years. I was a freshman and we had to do job shadowing. And I went to you and said, Ed, I want to do job shadowing on a record label. And he was like, there are no record labels in Pittsburgh, really.
You don't have any record labels.
I know this one guy who works at Atlantic. And so I reached out and Mark was like, no, that'll be weird. You'll be sitting behind me on my couch, like watching me work. I'm not doing that. I was like, oh, that's okay, but can we get coffee? And that relationship just continued for a decade. And obviously just he's an incredible guy, an incredible resource and mentor for me. Right. But other than on top of that, it ended up leading to a connection that
absolutely
never known that could happen that way. But that's how it happens.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, Adam, let's switch over to Adam now and get a little rebate on what you had done.
Yeah, and I have to just give a quick hat tip and bow down, because Max is 100% the exemplary person of just trying everything that you can, because it really I cannot stress that enough, that having a base of knowledge of the industry as a whole is really going to help push you forward, especially as the live event industry is starting to make somewhat of a return. Having that knowledge and understanding of kind of just all the facets of the industry is just so critical. So I'm Adam. For those that haven't met before, I've spoken a lot of Ed's classes before, and graduated in 2015 as an SAEM major. I grew up in not a musical household, but I, love that by nature, just love music. I don't know where the passion came from, but prior to coming to Point Park, I was actually dead set on doing performance or either performance or music therapy. And I think up until my junior and senior years of high school, it's when I really started going to shows a lot more, and I started to really understand the sensation of going to a show and the feeling that gave me, and the exuberance of just being in that atmosphere really made me want to pursue the live event industry. And shortly after, I took the tour of Point Park, and that's where I met you, Ed. And honestly, if I hadn't done that tour, if I hadn't gone and met with you, I probably wouldn't be here talking to y'all today. So truly have to thank you for where I'm at right now. But ended up going to Point Park with the focus in with the focus in the music industry and event management. I kind of knew from the get-go, just again, I was very laser focused on wanting to be in the live event industry. I didn't know exactly what sphere it was going to be, whether it was the record label side of things, whether it was the agency side, whether it was the management side. But I really took a keen liking to the promoter and venue side of things, because I had just started to really dive into this world of live entertainment and music and performance. So I knew that's really what I wanted to hone in on. So freshman year, we did the pre-professional experience, ended up shadowing with Drusky Entertainment, who honestly I'm kind of the opposite of Max, where I kind of just I fell into a lane and I really just stuck with it, because I was really enjoying just the event production side of things and the actual concert promotion side. So I did a shadowing undertaking with them, understood kind of the ins and outs of the box office and how that worked. understanding event production and following the schedule of load in to load out and kind of logistics of putting on an event. And that ranged from anywhere to small 100-cap club shows to mid-sized 1,000-cap venues. Did that for probably about a couple months, and then again, still was kind of trying to find the lane of where do I fit into this? Where am I finding a passion for it in this event promoter space? And ended up progressing my relationship with Brian and Josh Bakaitis, who was the vice president and talent booker at the time. And really made my way more into the marketing side of things, because I really, up until that point, I had been really immersed in the production side of things. And I started really getting involved in the actual the marketing side of how to publish an event, how to build an experience for the customer, because I had started working on a couple festivals. Not only with Max, who we worked on a lot of stuff outside of the scope of our day-to-day work. We did a lot of personal projects. I know that him and I both worked on 2 DIY festivals up in Mount Washington and in Allentown, and really just building the experience of doing events really was key to me. We did with Drusky Entertainment, we produced the Strip District Music Festival back in 2017, I think, which was a all-day free festival that brought in about 10,000 people into the Strip District, showcasing local artists all day, local vendors, and just having that experience of people in that space enjoying themselves and really being a catalyst to bring that experience. That was kind of the solidifying moment of all right, I really love the marketing space and being able to excite people about coming to events. So I started really diving in deep into the marketing aspect of the promoter world. And as kind of the company was shifting around, Josh started making his way over to Live Nation. I started moving my way up and found myself in a marketing manager role. So now at Drusky Entertainment, I'm overseeing the marketing management role. We have a team of pre-pandemic, we had a team of about 2 or 3 marketing staff and interns that kind of just oversaw our overall marketing implementation, from show and out schedules to budgeting, to digital implementation, to show review. Basically everything that happened up until the day of show was where my department came in, and we were overseeing about 500 shows a year, ranging from anywhere from 100-cap clubs to 10,000-cap amphitheaters and stadiums, and really just started to immerse myself in that, and just been really honed in on that for the last 3 years or so. And up until the pandemic, the live event industry was kind of at an all-time high. We were getting ready to announce some of the biggest concerts that we were going to for 2020, and then the pandemic hit, and we kind of quickly shifted focus and tried to figure out how we can survive the pandemic. And we quickly kind of latched on to us, as well as a couple other initial members of the National Independent Venue Association, started latching on to this organization that kind of rose from the ashes of nothing, because we all our industry is so unique in the way that it operates, and the way that promoters and venues operate on very slim margins as is, and trying to just figure out how to survive this completely unprecedented time together, because we were able to, the live event industry was able to sustain from after 9/11. They were able to sustain after the stock market crash, but never anything like this. And we had never anticipated that the live event industry was really going to take this kind of turn. And the National Independent Venue Association kind of came up quickly and started, really immersing ourselves in that. Started quit pivoting from the marketing field to advocacy. And honestly, it seemed to go hand in hand. If we could, I took it as, if I can sell a show, I can sell people on understanding what the live event industry is. I've been pushing these shows and understanding how the industry works for the last almost decade now at this point, and really using that to pivot quickly to start contacting local and state legislators, congressional leaders, and to get them to understand the nature of the live event industry. And in that, we ended up getting past what's now called the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant. But what started as a hashtag called Save Our Stages turned its way into legislation, which is now passed in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, called the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant, which is a $16 billion grant program for shuttered independent venues, talent representatives, promoters, movie theaters. It's the largest funded arts bill in United States history, and really grateful to have had a hand in getting that through. And just been really focused on the reopening aspect of that now that we're kind of seeing the vaccination plan starting to roll out, and really, just all this experience that we garnered from being in the Point Park space of building our network, of understanding how the live event space works, and really using that to our advantage to start educating the public and to start building these experiences so that people are ready to come back to live events when it's safe to do so. That's really been
like how you guys took the initiative to run with that. I mean, there were other people that could have, and I remember early on when I saw what you were doing on it, and I thought, and talked to Brian about it, I thought, man, that's really great. And this is a nationwide campaign, correct?
Yeah. So NEVA, again, like it was called Independent Venue Week, which was started by a firm called Marauder in New York. They would routinely do a conference every year that kind of celebrated the independent venues. And at the time, there's about 100 venues or so that would start to meet every year at a conference in New York, I believe. And prior to like the thought of, the restaurants have an associative voice. They've all kind of banded together to create a lobbying group. A lot of the other associations that are around, like hospitality and tech, they all have started like banding together, but there's really no voice for independent venues that has ever existed, especially in the for-profit space, because like I said, like the for-profit venues operate on a very slim margin, and we all have a very much of like a bootstrap mentality where we act very much individually and try to do what's best for our individual organizations just to survive. We've never come across a situation where we've had to collectively come together to push, to acknowledge that, and that we need to survive and how important we are to our local communities and to our economy. So this kind of the pandemic kind of just accelerated this quick motion. And at the time, nobody really knew what Zoom was at that time, so they hopped on like the week that everything was starting to shut down. All the key stakeholders and Independent Venue Week hopped on a call and figured out what can we do to get things rolling. And about a week later, we had our first town hall on Zoom, and about a month after that, we had started to ramp up to about 800 members. And as of today, we're now at about 2,500 independently owned and operated venues, promoters from across the country in every state in DC.
Yeah,
so it's really been.
I mean, it's just I remember years ago something a little bit similar, but not with the pandemic, is that we had a promoters association some years ago, and it reminds me a little bit about this because the promoters are very independent. No one ever really got all tied in together, and we formed an organization within ourselves to try to like do things together because even though your business is, and really the label business too, it's all independent and you're all competing, but yet we all working for the natural thing to be successful. So, you got to come together. What I was going to just say real quick was, do you, when do both of you're in this business more than certainly I am and our students, but I'm wondering what you're hearing about when are we coming back? Because that's what really everybody wants to know when it comes to entertainment. I get emails, 10 times a day, Ed, when are we going back to seeing concerts? I go, I don't know. I've asked some of the biggest people that I know in the industry, and they go, we don't have a crystal ball. And I go, well, no, I know that, but when are we coming back? So Max, maybe what are you hearing from the label side? Because you're gearing up, bands have to be gearing up for tours, right? I mean, they got to start working on it.
Yeah, I mean, with our department, we work very closely with agents on a daily basis, where our department is kind of the liaison between the label and the agency. Yeah, I mean, no one knows is the answer.
Right.
I'm hopeful with Biden's rollout. He just hit his goal of 100 million vaccines in the first 100 days, which is amazing. So obviously, the sooner we can get everyone vaccinated, the better. But I think it's going to be piecemeal when it does come back, in a couple of different ways. First and foremost, geographically. I have artists on my roster that are announcing tours for, May, actually, which is a quick turnaround. But they're socially distanced tours or they're drive-in tours. I mean, that kind of stuff exists, but a lot of it is in, southern states, in Midwest states where maybe they have a little bit more space to have an outdoor show at, a venue that would traditionally be inside. They've shifted and have been able to do outdoor shows. And it's because the local and state regulations are a little bit less strict than some other states. Um, so it's going to be that, I think, first, and it's going to be tough for bands and agents and managers to figure out how to string together tours that are feasible. Traveling between state lines is going to be an issue. Like if you can play a show in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, but Ohio has really strict restrictions and you have to get to Illinois, like you can't, can you just drive through the state? I don't, no one really knows it yet. If you have to stop at a gas station, you have to, like court, like no one.
Agents about that. The agents have said, that's going to be part of the difficulty because as we know, we're routing a tour. And that's what the agent's job is, to make it as short as possible. But boy, now this city is available, but this city's not available. And, and I'm geared up for a major tour,
Yeah. And for international, I mean, within the North, within North America, like I have a couple of artists that are based in Toronto that are developing acts that rely heavily on going out on the road and supporting bigger bands. Their vaccine rollout in Canada has been a lot slower than it has in the US. But for those artists, like I have to come up with a new creative solution because touring is going to come back, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to come into the US. And it doesn't mean that artists are going to be going into Canada to play shows immediately. So it's going to be, geographically case by case basis initially. And then obviously like venue, like the size of the venue, I think clubs will come back sooner. Arenas will probably be the last thing to come back. Although New York, it's interesting. They just open up arenas for sporting events. So technically you could do a concert, but it wouldn't make sense because you would lose a ton of money. But you could, I guess, technically do a concert in an arena now, but it's at like 30% capacity or something.
That's the problem we run into, because even though sports is announcing that they can open up these venues and do 25% or whatever it might be, it's a little different with the teams that are already playing there, et cetera. The whole financial structure, well, we know, and we tell our students all the time that the reason why we don't see anything in indoor arenas or indoor, even the theaters, the same thing, is because it's financially not possible to work under such low amounts of money, except maybe in clubs and things like that. And I know, Adam, you guys do more, you're doing some club shows. You've been doing club shows, right?
Yeah. And the financial structure is just so different when it comes to, I mean, it's really apples and oranges when it comes to like arenas versus, I mean, especially with the major sporting leagues, the level of sponsorship contribution, the level of ancillary income that they have versus like the small club that doesn't really have anything like that. They don't have the kind of infrastructure to sustain. And to that point, like it's just so multifaceted as far as like when the quote return to live is, because to Max's point too, I mean, even we constantly talk about it, how it's based off of a national inventory of artistry. So not only do the states have to be open, like all the states have to be open, we have to be able to operate at 100%, because as it stands, most venues, again, I keep saying it, but like we operate on such slim profit margins that to be able to open at 75%, 50%, even 75% of capacity, we're still losing money at that rate. So we have to not only rely on states being open, we have to be able to open at 100%. And on top of that, artists have to be comfortable with wanting to tour. But thankfully, like the vaccination rollout plan, I mean, Maxie, I know you can probably speak to that more, but I mean, with the vaccination rollout plan, you know, some folks just don't want to go out till, you know, till it's safe to do so. And we just, to that point, like, we just don't have a crystal ball. And
Right.
we're still in, you know, at least from the venue side, like, we're still in survival mode, and just trying to hibernate until we can get the green light to go.
You had some success, and I'm sure you might do it again this year with some drive-in shows, right? Because that was outside. So you converted some drive-in theaters to do some outdoor. Can you do any more of those this summer? Do you have any planned?
Yeah, we definitely. I just got off of a call yesterday just to try and figure out what the schedule was for the summer, or for like the spring and summer months. And Max and I actually ended up working on a show last summer. We booked one of his artists, Skillet, at the drive-in. And worked very closely on that, and trying to figure out promotional ideas for that show. But yeah, we're planning on doing some, but again, like, the artistry, it's just a kind of, I don't want to say like a slim pickings, but like, it's the artists that are like willing and able to want to hit the road. And we've been very fortunate as Drusky Entertainment in the sense that we've been able to kind of pivot towards this model. And it's still a very, you know, even still with the ability to do events at the capacity we're able to, the expense ceiling is still pretty high. So, you know, the need for collaboration between, you know, the agent and the promoter at this point is just so essential, because artists still, from time to time, like, the agent is still looking out for the artist's best interest, but they still want the same money that they've been getting pre-pandemic. And it's just really hard to, like, make those ends meet. And we have to, well, I mean, we've had to turn away offers on shows because it just didn't financially make sense, which is totally fine. And I think we walk away amicably, but I think we're in this period now where trying to be collaborative with agencies, which are now starting to, you know, I think a lot of major agencies started to furlough a lot of staff or lay off a lot of staff, which has really started to spin off in a very interesting sense, where all these independent agencies are starting to pop up all over the place, which has been really, you know, really great to see.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, I've had a lot of people ask me, you know, will the talent reduce their guarantees a bit to allow for these numbers to make sense? And, you know, and I don't have the answer by that, but I'm hearing that, you know, they want to be more sensible. But unfortunately, as you guys know, and everybody probably on this call, that these tours are major tours, usually on the big ones. So they're carrying a lot of things that cost a lot of money, whether it's people, buses, you know, and remember, all the acts have to pay for that. That's not coming out of the so-called promoter. So the reason why the guarantees are where they are in the first place are pretty much because of what they travel with. And then hopefully when all those expenses are paid, the band still makes some money. But I mean, you know, a lot of agents I'm hearing saying, well, the managers, they want to play and they want to cut back, but, you know, they don't want to put out a certain quality of a show. Now that becomes another debate. Are we going to reduce the style of the show? You know, that type of thing, you know.
Yeah, and you're exactly right with that. Like, that it is so expensive because they want to put on the best possible show they can for the fans, right? So if the first place they're going to cut is production, right? Because that cuts down on the amount of people they have to pay, it cuts down on just general expenses. Yeah. But it's going to lead to not a 100% show from them, right? So then exactly. You as a fan, are you going to want to go and pay for a show that is subpar for what the artist normally does? You might not. And then they lose out on that money just because they were trying to cut expenses. So it's I think it's really difficult on the bigger level where you're dealing with those higher production.
Right, with the big acts, right? Plus, a lot of those acts are used to performing in such a status that you're exactly right. When somebody goes, I expect, and all at once they get this really tamed down show, and it's like, what am I watching here? You know. Hey, I wanted to bring in Shay for a second. Shay, do you have any questions that you might have that some of the students may have already given you, plus anything that you've seen on the chat so far?
Sure. I have a quick one, really quick, and then I noticed one pop up on the chat. But before that, I wanted to ask, we've been talking in our classes a lot about whether there will be like a boom in the industry or whether people will be a little more reserved about going to shows. So what are your takes on that? Do you think people will be really eager to go to shows, or will people want to kind of hang back and wait until they feel a little more safe?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was just about to bring that up. I think that's kind of been the one thing that has been getting people, maybe it's been pushing people to try and like hold on a little bit longer, because we do feel like there is going to be kind of like, at least from my perspective, I feel like there's going to be this kind of roaring 20s movement. I mean, we saw it with some festivals are starting to go up now. Life is Beautiful in Vegas. I mean, it's different per state and per like where it is geographically and what the sense is. But I think across the board, I mean, even with Life is Beautiful in Vegas going up, they sold out the festival. They even upped their capacity. They sold the festival out in 30 minutes,
Wow.
which is way faster than they've ever sold out in previous years. And we've been doing, we've been working with a lot of the nonprofit and some of the venues there just to try and get a sense, like from an audience perspective, of where people are feeling comfortable, where people are feeling whenever it's the green light's given and people can start attending events. People are relatively willing to spend the same, if not more. And one thing I found out yesterday is that Americans at this point have more money saved up than they've ever had in United States history.
We definitely saved some money during this time because we had a place to go or spend it.
I think once people feel comfortable and safe to want to leave the space to start going to live events, we have to make sure that it's safe to do so. There's going to be a lot of precautions that need to be taken. I think coming out of it, like we're still trying to understand if mask mandates are still going to be necessary coming to shows. I think that'll be around for a while. At least until we start to develop more herd immunity. But realistically, like at least from the buyer end and from the promoter end, we're starting to see just people are just really antsy to want to get out. So I really think that once the green light's given, there's just going to be this huge roar of people that want to come to shows.
Yeah. Max, you have any thoughts on that? I mean,
I generally agree with what Adam said. First and foremost, it's going to be the vaccine rollout, and once everyone gets vaccinated, like people will be comfortable then. I sort of think it's less of a like once that's not a factor, it's less of a comfortability of like, okay, do I want to go to a venue because I'm afraid I might get COVID, and it really, even though people may have more money saved, there is going to be so much entertainment happening all the time. And so just outside of even concerts happening, like, are people going to want to go and spend their money on concerts? That's kind of the question that we always keep coming back to. And it's like creating that value, kind of like what we're talking about, by not cutting those production costs, and also making the show more valuable in itself by I think we're going to see some tours packaging together with two headliners that normally could just do shows on their own. But to make the show more valuable, I think they're going to come together and take a lower guarantee, but hopefully sell it out and get people to come out to the show when they could spend money on a show tomorrow or the day after or the next week. So I don't think it will be. I don't think it'll be people that don't want. Like, I think everyone is going to want to go to shows, but there will be so many shows that, like, how do you get them to come to your show versus the 10 other shows that are happening?
That's right. There's going to be a lot of competition out there, we're thinking, right? I mean, I hear this from Live Nation. I hear it from AEG that we think it's going to be rolling quickly. But as a promoter, and I know especially the marketing promoters and the people that are putting out the money, you're thinking, I've got all these different events are going to go. And I mean, people are going to want to go, but they can still only go to so many things,
Yeah.
What about I think I saw it on chat, maybe Shay, did you something about streaming? Was there a live streaming question I saw?
Yeah, so Katie Homan dropped in the chat. What are your opinions on online shows? And do you think they'll help make up for some lost profit, or is it more of just a temporary solution?
I'd like to hear from both of you on what you just think in general about online, and will these things continue on? Because also we're always thinking about jobs for our seniors, and when they graduate, and we have traditional things that we all teach. But one thing we've all been saying is hopefully when things continue, those new things we've developed as an industry will need people to work them. That's part of our thinking process. So Adam, what do you think?
I mean, I definitely think that streaming is here to stay in a regard. Do I think that it is an end all be all solution? Not necessarily. The issue that we were running into here, especially with like some of the local clubs, was that if they didn't have the money to shell out to build that infrastructure in the space, they were already operating on a loss. So it was really hard to get that installed. But I think that moving forward, it's another source of revenue that a lot of people are going to need, because there's still going to be maybe it's not a lot, but there still is going to be reluctancy for folks to not want to go out to shows until they feel comfortable. And I think until that time, having that kind of, I don't want to say fail safe, but having that backup mechanism of being able to stream shows and being able to relive content, and having that live in a digital space, I think is going to be really, really critical for venues to just, again, have another source of income coming in if they're able to get the the necessary equipment. And I know that I mean, like, artists in their own space have been doing that already, which has been great to see. But from a touring perspective, I do think that mechanism is going to be there, or is going to start to be implemented a lot more moving forward.
Max, what do you think about the streaming concerts?
Yeah, I agree with everything Adam said. I personally think watching a live stream is super boring. And I know a lot of people feel that way. And I think that as touring comes back, like, this conversation, and it's a great question, I think it will be a question that continues to happen, but I think the conversation will be less of, is live streaming replacing shows? Even in a time like now, it's not really replacing shows. It's sort of two separate conversations. But out of this, I think, like, yeah, there are so many jobs that were created because of it. Actually, the guy that was in my department actually went to work for a live streaming company. But I think it's going to be, once touring does come back, it's going to be a great ancillary income opportunity for artists. I think it's going to be something that probably promoters on at least the bigger level are going to start trying to bake into their contracts for shows, where I wouldn't be surprised if they had the rights, if they try to get the rights to live streaming the concert as part of the guarantee for the show. I think artists are going to have to deal with that on a pretty regular basis, and I think that they'd be smart to make sure that they retain those rights, and also to incorporate that in not only their marketing plan when it comes to a tour, but just as a great opportunity for extra income. Whether you're live streaming, every artist on a bigger scale, or mid to bigger scale, is going into a venue a day or two before their tour to rehearse, right, do the final rehearsals. So if you can capture that content once you have the show together, capture the live stream, right, you can then use that before the tour to help promote the tour, to try and sell tickets, or after the tour, which I think is probably the way to go. So you have the tour, and then anyone who, if it's a North American tour and you have someone in Europe that would love to see that tour because they love the album or whatever it is, and they don't have the opportunity to see that, now all of a sudden they can see that tour as it is in full. And you can charge money for that, and you can bundle it with merch packages, and there's just an opportunity to hit a much wider audience with something that is so geo-specific, and all of a sudden we're realizing it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, so that is definitely one thing that we didn't see prior to. So that could be possible job opportunities, right, for students that could get into some portion thereof. I mean, I don't know what the jobs would be right now, but we often talk about having students follow a lot of those things up kind of on their own, because I see things even on, Facebook and the internet that'll talk to you more about that. Shay, any other questions you might have?
Sorry, and just really quick, to your point there, like, for this specifically, like, yeah, it is a totally not new industry, but like, there are so many live streaming companies that popped up, and you can look at it as a regular show, right? You have ticketing, you have marketing, you have production, you have a film crew come in, you have to have someone that produces the event, you have a promoter. Like, it's all the same aspects as a regular show, it's just in a digital space.
Right, exactly, sure. Yeah. Shay, another question you might have, or that you saw somebody chatted with, please.
Sure. There's another one in the chat that says, once the pandemic is over, we can expect artists to be eager to tour and perform. So how do you decide who to book in your space if you have multiple artists coming to you at once?
Okay, promoter. Let's go to Adam on that one.
It's interesting because it's basically like the balance that we've kind of tried to undertake over the last year has been, all of the shows that happened in 2020 are now being pushed a year down the road. So we're kind of, facing this kind of bottleneck of we have shows that are already confirmed and now other artists that are trying to now get back on the road. So really, we're like, at least from the promoter perspective, and I don't know where it is across the board, but trying to just reprogram what we had in 2020, which, some shows are on there like 5th or 6th reschedule at this point, because we still just have not had a clear sense of when events can happen, and artists don't want to, they don't want to lose the show. They still want to continue to play for their audiences. So really, and back to my other point, as far as, just trying to find collaborative agents to work with, I think that the promoter and agency relationship is now like more important than ever, because we need to be able to work together to, reach fair and structured deals. And it's going to be really hard for promoters and venues that operate as promoters that are buying these shows that, over the course of the last year have lost, 6 figures, 7 figures in operating budgets and operating losses, to then have to go on and say, okay, I'm comfortable with taking, a 6-figure guarantee. So it's really, at least from my perspective, like, it's really important that relationship maintains, as far as trying to develop a good relationship, especially on like the smaller scale level. I think it'll probably be a little bit different on the arena level, because I think those are like the A-list artists that people are really excited to want to go see. And I mean, I don't know what the situation has been with Live Nation, but I mean, after the Super Bowl, the weekend announced new 2021 dates, which I think have all pretty much sold out at this point. Yeah, it's at least from like the club end, it's just trying to be very collaborative with the agents. But right now we're just really experiencing kind of this bottleneck, which what we kind of assumed was going to happen. So we have to be a little.
You made a good point where you're trying to, first of all, many promoters are all in the same boat. They're trying to get everything that was held originally and not performed and get them rescheduled, because those agents and managers are still going to want to get them out on the road. So you have all of that. Plus you have any new bands that are, like I just talked to a manager the other day, and he said, we're coming out with a new record in April. They're a really big band. And I thought, like, wow, they go, we just were sitting around, we decided to record a record and we're coming out. We're not touring right now, but we're coming out with it. But by the time, that record really does infiltrate and hit, that band would probably want to hit the road. That wasn't even somebody that was maybe being considered by a promoter at the time. So it'll be a really rough time for promoters to decide on that. It was a great question.
Yeah.
Because it'll be, what can we work financially? I mean, it's going to be tough. I mean, Max, the bands that you're working on right now, what exactly do you do for them? What is your role? I wanted to ask you that before and I forgot.
Yeah. So in the touring and artist development department, it's kind of 2 different roles. But when it comes to touring, really, it's just making sure that we're aligned with the agent and aligned with the manager. Making sure that tour dates are listed where they need to be listed, making sure the rest of the label knows, press team knows, everyone else at the label knows when these tours are happening. Radio is still huge, regardless of people's opinions on it. Radio is huge. So it's making sure that we have all the promotional aspects of it. From market to market, we're kind of the ones that are filtering that into the manager. So if it's an interview in this city and you also have a radio thing that you have to do this day, like, we're kind of putting together those schedules and getting the approvals from managers. Really, it's anything promotional related is all running through our department, and then we're the ones filtering that instead of it coming to the manager from radio and press and digital and all these different people. It all runs through us. So it's like Adam mentioned, we worked on Skillet, which is one of the bands that I represent, for their drive-in shows last summer. They also are doing about 20 more drive-in shows that just announced last week.
Is that right?
Yeah, so artists are still doing the drive-in shows, but it's coming up with unique promotional opportunities to try and sell tickets. We for the one with Adam, we have some like internal owned and operated companies that do contesting. So we were able to get, I think we did like a meet and greet and some kind of merch package and like VIP seating, I think. And we ran that for a few markets, but we ran it through one of our playlisting companies. So then you're just creating opportunities for bands where it's like, yeah, we're getting more visibility for the shows, but also we're driving fans to maybe go and listen to that band on Spotify, and we're collecting the data on that, like so that we can reuse it whenever the next tour comes, and we can build our mailing list for artists. And even at the biggest scale, it's still looking at it on like a developing artist scale, where every single fan that you can gain is important, and you have to fight for that fan and then deliver whenever you have the opportunity. So yeah, we really are, there's no like real specific thing.
Right. No,
it's a kind of a interesting department at a label, but
I can imagine. Shay, did I see a question about data? Him speaking about data made me think of that.
Yes, there's one that says, I'm curious what you think about data in the music, in data use in music, sorry. In our big data class, we're talking a lot about the use of big data in music, in the music industry. Do you think that that can be helpful to up and coming artists to get off the ground easier? And what is your use of big data right now, if at all?
Perfect time. And just so you know, we now have a class for that, which Kendra, one of our professors, teaches. So it just ties right in with what you were about to say, or saying a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit more, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, look, there is more music that's coming out now than there ever has been before, right? So if you're a small artist or a developing artist, which is where everyone starts, like, how can you build that fan base? And yeah, like, first and foremost is make incredible music and like know how to release it. But after that, you have to be able to make sure that you can retarget these fans. Like if you're playing a small club and you're opening for, and this is what our band did, right? Like if you're playing a small club opening for a bigger band, and all of a sudden you're in front of even 100 people that have never heard you before, and you've made good enough music where they like it, like making sure that you're set up, and it's part of what I do also for our smaller acts, making sure you're set up at your show with a merch table, with a mailing list, making sure that you have promotional things there that you can just give to every single person, and putting in the effort to do that. From the data side, like, yeah, making sure that you're capturing their emails. So it's, hey, here's a free sticker, but you can get the free sticker if you sign up for our mailing list, and it takes 2 seconds. And making sure that that's easily accessible and readily available for the fan, because no one wants to have to stand in line to like sign up for a newsletter to get a sticker, right? But knowing how to engage with the fan on that individual basis and building that mailing list one by one is so crucial. And email, like direct email, is still the most efficient way to reach all of your fans. It's more efficient than Facebook advertising or posting on Instagram or anything like that. So yeah, data, pretty much. That's amazing that you guys have a class like that.
Yeah, that was great that Kendra decided to start one. And you're exactly right. I often talk about that's information that we never knew about years ago, when we weren't talking to our fans at all, except buying radio or newspaper, all these traditional things. It's so amazing how technology has changed that, so that, we can talk to the customer in all forms, whether it be Broadway or live entertainment or sports. And we want that email to come to them. I mean, just selling shows is so different now. Adam, that's right down your line, because you're into so much digital marketing, right?
Yeah, I mean, man, I wish I had that class. It sounds so cool. Yeah, I mean, that's we're very, at least from my perspective, from the digital marketing world, data is everything. That's kind of how we retarget our fans. It's how we capture our core audience. It's how we get people to buy into an experience is by understanding who our audience is, and how to effectively reach them. I mean, even from the artist side, that when we are booking shows, we're looking at data whenever we're looking at past performance history. We're looking at streams. We're looking at album sales. We're looking at past touring and how it did in different markets. So data is everything for us. And from a marketing perspective, I mean, that's how we measure. I mean, data is how we measure if a show is successful or not. If we can effectively use our advertising dollars, I mean, it's commerce in a perspective where we are, trying to understand like what our return on investment is, or what our return on our ad spend is. I've been very, critical and maybe a little too like nerdy and in our data approach, but as far as like just trying to understand, I think we're in kind of this golden age now, especially from like a digital marketing perspective, that we have the access and ability to be able to like tap into all these kind of resources with, with our direct, customer relations management platforms. We use MailChimp a lot. That helps us target like our high value customers, our Facebook and Instagram methodology, which kind of helps us retarget a lot of our core fans and artist fans. We just kind of have this like new expansive network of just things that we're able to do. And data is just such a huge proponent of that.
Yeah, that's really great. Great. Bob, how are we on time? I see it's 2:06. I just want to double check. Couple more questions, okay? All right, good. Shay, do we have any more that we either asked or that you had from previous questions?
We do have one more in the chat that says, what do you think about general admission venues? Do you think they'll be able to remain, or will they have to shift to a more seated or structured setup?
I mean, I guess it's kind of back to the point of being at any kind of like capacity restrictions. It's what we're kind of dealing with now. The GA versus seated venue is just such a debacle and kind of up in the air right now. And other states are kind of handling it differently, where they're currently allowing, general admission seating pods. Other venues like Jurgles and Craft House right now here are doing reduced capacity with seating arrangements, and they have to maintain, the big key is that they have to maintain a 6-foot social distance, which no matter what the capacity is, if we still have to maintain that 6-foot distance, that still cuts our capacity at a drastic rate. So really, it kind of just goes back to the fact that like we have to be kind of at 100% to be able to operate efficiently. If we're at anything less than that, that's going to cause us to have to spike our prices. Like the price of your beer is going to go up, the price of your concert ticket's going to have to go up. And that's just simply to help cover operational costs, because even if we operate at 50% capacity, 25% capacity, we still have to pay 100% of the expenses. Maybe we have reduced staff, but now we have additional incurred expenses like PPE, more safety measures that we have to go through. We still have insurance that we have to pay. We still have artists that we have to pay. So everything, all that like existing expenses that are still there. So the GA space is just, realistically, until we're able to open up at 100% capacity, and until, we start to develop herd immunity or more of a herd immunity, it's going to be really tough for like the GA space to kind of adapt into a seated method, unless it's, a really large outdoor space. Indoor space is just, I think Max said it before, like it's probably going to be one of the last to come back. So it's just, yeah, we're still trying to bide our time there.
Yeah, what's so tough is we know it's coming. At least that part we can see. It's just that it can't come quick enough, because I mean, we thought we were going to be doing this maybe in the fall or early in the spring, and now we're backed up, and even though we hear these positive things, which are so great to hear, and we are being vaccinated, well, we just want it to come quicker. That's all. Shay, anything else before we wrap? Maybe another question or so that you might have?
I do have one more to close it out. Sure. So I wanted to ask, we were talking about, the possibility of social distance shows not being too viable for venues because they're still losing money. What about, like once it comes back, I can imagine we may need more staff for any kind of, if there's any COVID safety measures that need to be taken or something like that. So how will smaller venues handle that? Like, do you think we're going to need more staff, or do you think we would be able to operate off of like limited staff?
It depends on venue to venue, but realistically, there are courses out there now for COVID compliance training. And I think like having that understanding, especially like trying to get into the space is going to be necessary. It's going to be a lot more communication with local and county health departments. So I do think that it's not going to, I don't think it's going to be we're going to be able to operate at a lesser capacity of staff, because we need to be able to ensure that our customers are going to feel safe when they come in. So being able to show that we're taking the necessary precautions and measures to be able to open safely. I think that venues are starting to contemplate it, but realistically, I mean, with the notion that a lot of the efficacy from these vaccinations that there's 100% effectiveness against hospitalizations and death, and that the transmission rate as people are getting vaccinated is very, very high. Like it's very low as far as transmission. So I think that customers are going to feel some sort of safety net with that. And we understand that there's still the challenge of using our network to encourage that, but at least it kind of helps us gauge where our audience is at, and it kind of just helps us build the framework of what safety measures we can be taking. And that's anything from, again, like hiring a COVID compliance manager, whether it's making sure that there's local and county health department on site. We just don't know realistically what that looks like yet, but there are suggestions for like reopening guidelines for what that could look like.
That's a new job for one of our students, COVID compliance manager. I can see it on the card now, right? They wanted to work for a record label. Forget the label. You're going over here to be a COVID compliance manager.
Oh, they have that in film.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? I mean, we're getting there.
Oh yeah, that's a big job now.
Before we wrap, we have all these students on here, Max and Adam. You guys did a great job. You've done great things. Maybe some last minutes of wisdom, of advice, that most of you could cover. So maybe Max, go first, please.
Yeah, sure. I would just say, get as much experience as you can. Use your resources. Lean on your professors. They all are experts in their fields and can help you tremendously, and will. And Adam and I are testaments to that. So lean on them. I think, just be hungry to learn about what you want to do about your industry. If it's music, make sure that you're up to date on all the latest music trends and music news. There are a couple of great resources that I can share in the chat. But if you're interested in music, like, you should be reading like Music Business Worldwide, which is just music news. You should be reading that every day. You should be looking at digital music news. You should be researching people that are in the industry. If you would work for a record label, like, learn who these record executives are, learn how they got their start, and you'll find that a lot of people's stories are pretty similar for the most part. And I think that is just encouraging whenever you feel like, oh, I can't get a job, or I can't, how do I break in to the industry? And so yeah, just like learning about your craft and like being passionate about it, because there are a million people that want to do the job that you want to do, and you have to know more than them, and you have to be willing to work harder than them. So yeah, I would just say using your resources and just doing your homework.
Yeah, good way to put it. Yeah. Adam, any think you can add to that?
Yeah, 100%. And like utilizing your network and just surrounding yourself with people that are willing to push you. I mean, I met Max at a show the first time I met him, we worked Kanye West and Jay-Z together, and that was one of the worst experiences ever. But I mean, that really kind of just helped, was the beginning of of my understanding of like building a network of people that wanted to push you, and just understanding that this industry is really it's a 24/7 industry, and you have to be ready to be able to, you have to be ready for that. You have to be ready to work long hours, and you have to be ready to do it. But at the end of the day, if you have a passion for it, that's why I still love what I do. Is music has always been kind of at the core of what I love, and it's been really great to see this come to fruition as my career.
Well, you guys are good examples of really students that, and we have many of them, coming up. So in all different departments. One thing we're very fortunate is that our students are really passionate about whatever they want to do. But, we see people go off like you guys have, and have success. And that's why we like to call you back, just like we did this morning with other students. And I always tell these students that are watching today, we're going to be calling you in 4 or 5 years, hopefully, and you'll be on the next one. And they go, oh, really? I go, yes, you'll be coming back. Believe me, we'll tap into you more than you can imagine. But you've been passionate. You've worked hard. You were willing to work those weekends, those holidays, whether you were in the band or whether you were in the label. And I know we didn't get a chance to talk much about Nevada Color, but what is up with that band? Is it on hiatus right now? Because, you know, I've got some Nevada Color CDs I wanted to get signed. Worth something someday.
We'll sign it for you,
All right.
Ed.
We on hiatus. Is that band even around? I know not everybody's in the band, but are they the other three members? What are they up to these days?
Yeah, so it's done. We've
Boy.
closed that chapter
You
on our
just couldn't work
lives. You know,
together, boy. That's tough.
oh no, it wasn't that. It
I'm
was you know, we
No.
gave it a shot. We gave it a
You
real
gave it a
shot for
great
about
shot.
7 years. And it
Yeah,
was
no, you really did.
amazing experience. We learned so much. And if you're not in a band or not musical and you want to work in music, like another great just last minute suggestion is find a local band that you're passionate about and just say, hey, I'll do anything for you that you want. I'll help build your website. I'll book shows for you. I'll like do it all, do it for free, because that experience that you'll get from that is so valuable. Just make sure you really like the band, because otherwise you'll drive yourself crazy. But yeah, the other guys are doing well. Two of them are like they went to Point Park as well. They were
Right.
cinema students.
Right.
Again, like use your resources. There's a whole cinema department. Live streaming is important. It's going to be important. Content's important. Like you have resources at the school that can help you out. If you're trying to shoot a music video, if you're just trying to shoot a behind the scenes thing, like use those resources. So yeah, they're still working in their fields,
Good.
doing like video editing, and then our drummer is in law school in
Okay.
at UCLA. So
But you know what? Those are great experiences, and we have some students that are in our program that are musicians, and they want to follow their path. And so some of the things that I always say, and I bring up you guys a lot, actually, you know, and it's okay to follow the path, but there'll be a time sometimes when it doesn't completely work. And I always say, put that clock on so that the clock doesn't go off 10, 12, 15
Yeah.
years. And you're now playing at the Holiday Inn on the weekends or playing for weddings, you know. You've taken your passion and you've gone into the business side of it, which is what we teach. Same thing we do for athletes who may not get to the majors, and dancers that, you know, do a stage. So again, thank you both. Great job, Max, Adam. Really appreciate it. Shay, thanks very much. You did a great job. I'm sure we'll be in touch with you guys, you know, throughout as usual. And I guess next, big Jason Varnish, did you sweat anymore down there? You got some sweat on your head there.
No, I was able to actually eat lunch and I towed off specifically just for
Look at him. Oh my God. Just don't put any cold drinks on the table there. I don't want to see those. But I guess Jason,
to keep track, so.
if we'll be turning it over to you soon. Are you going right into this segue from now, or are you is there a time element?
2:40 is when we're gonna start. So
There's always a wait. There's always a wait for your show. It doesn't go right into it. We've got to wait a little.
time to decompress from the massive amount of awesome information you just shared with everybody. So our brains can let out a little bit and then I'll fill it back up again. So
That's great.